Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, FCM community. This is your annual preseason podcast with myself and whoever joins me tonight. So, Gilly should be here in the next 7 to 23-ish minutes. We'll see what that happens or not. But nevertheless, we will move on with whatever bullshit I have to say, and then whatever bullshit Gilly has to say will come as it comes. So, there are a number of people on here. PR's on, Maddie's on, a bunch of people are on. So some of them might decide to jump in and talk as well. Any and all are welcome. But we will start with our rundown of division by division. We're going to start there because I know Gilly's really excited about talking about trades and free agency and all that other crap. So we're going to start with the stuff that, actually matters, like how the divisions are going to shake out and all that crap. So as we look at it, we're going to start, as we always do, in the... No, that's not the button I wanted to hit. The American League East. So the American League East is going to be quite interesting this year. I think there is a shakeup on the horizon out in the American League East. I'm not sure if it quite happens this year, but I think it's coming pretty soon. So I think New York is the team that most people just kind of associate with the East, just because they've won one recently and they always put together a pretty good team. But they are aging. I believe we talked about that last year. And it's getting more and more evident. Their hitters are aging and starting to decline a little bit. And they don't have a lot in the minors to speak of on that side. Pitching, you still got the big two. And I think that's what really sets New York apart from some of the other team in divisions is the pitching. Garachi and Hall and Bortillo, technically a big three up there at top of the rotation. It's a rotation that's going to pitch you pretty deep into any type of postseason type run. So will they get there with the hitting that they have? I think a lot of that depends on if those hitters drop more this season. If you start to see some more of those hitters drop, it's going to become an issue of, does New York have enough assets to trade for things that are going to help keep that going for another couple of years, or do they just run it out with what they have? So I like the Yankees pitching. Hitting, I don't know if it's going to be quite enough. On the opposite side of that, you have a team that's eventually, if not soon, going to kind of pop out of their hibernation. That is Montreal, who has the hitting. Montreal made a big trade this offseason, picking up Elliott Ravarari from New York in a surprise move, just to add to an already solid lineup with cemented down by Bob Downs. Bob the Builder Downs in the middle of that lineup. So the thing that Montreal lacks is the thing that New York has, which is pitching. Montreal's pitching is not ideal. It's not bad per se. I know Gilly, if you're around, will talk a lot about John Wheatman. Big fan of him, the Rookie of the Year from last year. A pretty solid, if not good-looking pitcher. He also has Sergio Valador, another guy that's kind of up and coming, might have a pretty good year this year. So still got Ladle Jones, who is fine. Looks like Randall Johnson might be starting the year in the rotation. It looks like this what it was in spring training, so we'll see. And then Ben Crane, who's terrible. He did go out and spend big money on Lowell Woods, relief pitcher this offseason, to kind of, I would assume, hold the closer spot, even though it looks like he wasn't set up during spring training for some reason. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what Montreal can do with the hitters. If those hitters can power the okay pitching to a point of playoff contention. I'm not entirely sure if that is the direction that they'll end up going, but Montreal is definitely trending upwards for the moment. We'll see if the rise continues. And then the other three teams in the AL East, none of them are necessarily bad teams, but all of them just have more obvious holes, I think, than the other ones. So one team to watch out for is Baltimore. Baltimore has a pretty solid lineup and a pretty decent, if not good, rotation as well. So if there was one team that might surprise, it could be them. I like the team that HH put together out there. It'll be interesting to see if they can play up to New York and if Montreal can kind of get up and play that level as well. And then never count out Boston. Fred's always quiet. Nobody really pays attention necessarily to what he's doing, what he's not doing. But when you look, he has built an interesting little team there. And I'm not saying little in some diminutive sense, but I mean, there's some interesting young players on that team that, if they're due for big years, could be a difference maker. They still have Fred Sloan out there, traded for Josh Cooper, I believe, last year. but has this new guy here that's going to be a rookie this year, Jake Gressel, second baseman that just looks like a phenomenal player. So we'll see how he plays. Still got Jose Griffin up top. Also, this Charles Miller, who I'm not sure if he's still going to be a rookie or not. It looks like he might be. Interesting to see how he does. So a bunch of young bats in Boston. They look quite good. And you put that in a rotation that is, at the moment, I'd say average at best. Dorton's a pretty good player. Cloninger is just kind of putting stats up at the moment. He's an average pitcher at best. But you got a couple of young guys there, Kurt Anderson, Adam Aaron, who are probably almost there, if just a year off, and then more guys even below that coming up through the minors. So will this be Boston's year? Maybe not, but I think they're going to maybe surprise a couple of people with how well they should play with the team he has out there. And again, Fred gets some early jumps out of some of those guys that he already has up there. Could go a long way for that division to become actually quite interesting this year. So, and then Toronto has a new GM as a longtime GM Corey retired. And Breeze has come in and taken over. So no trades yet out of Toronto, a bit of surprise. Everybody assumed a big rebuild in Toronto, something that had been needed for a while, but with the change of management, it seems expected. And yet no trades have come forth out of that. So we'll see what they do. I'm assuming a rebuild is still in order, but who knows? The new GM might decide to try to add a couple pieces and make a run at a division that is, I would consider very much up in the air at the moment. So anybody want to chime in about the AL East, or should I just move on to the Central? All right, going to move on to the Central. So in the AL Central, you have the reigning World Series champions, the Detroit Tigers, still sitting there. It's funny when you open up Mogul and have some fun with it, like projected wins and losses, which is just nonsensical, but just the way that Mogul does things. They actually have Detroit finishing fourth in that division. World Series champions, who didn't change too awful much, finishing fourth in the division. So it's always funny how that goes, but as Andy and many others will say, you never count out GB's team, and really shouldn't, because there's not much changed over from that team from last year. Still got all the pitchers there. For the most part, got all the new hitters. Added Nate Gentry as free agent signing, so to kind of hold down third base. It'll be interesting to see how Detroit does this year. I think Cleveland's just one of those weird teams. They seem on paper always to have a very good team, if not one of the better teams in that Central Division, and they just never put it together. They can't get it together enough to get to the playoffs and get deep into the playoffs. So it's very interesting how that kind of plays out almost on a yearly basis. Is it just a really bad string of bad luck? It might be. I don't know. I mean, you look at their hitters. They've got a lot of good hitters, some good fielders. Like it's a solid lineup. That for some reason it plays down every year or just doesn't come together. I'm not sure. So obviously it's headlined by Carlos Mencia, the $25 million man. I know if the season does not go well, he will hit the trade block once again very quickly. It'll be interesting to see with the new fiscal limitations who, if anybody, comes knocking for the 29-year-old Carlos, making what he's making and making what he's probably presumably going to continue to make in the next few years to come. So on the pitching side, again, they went out and got John Brinson this offseason from Atlanta. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do at the top of that rotation, followed by Colon, Rivera, Donaldson, Kevin Andrews, who was always a highly touted prospect that just missed, unfortunately. So it'll be interesting to see how that rotation in that lineup plays together. On paper, they clearly look to be one of the strongest teams in that Central Division. Will they play out to that? We'll see. I don't know. Chicago, in the midst of I think I said this last year, and people probably ignored it, and that's good. But it's time is winding down in Chicago. There are no prospects on either side of the ball. Their players are aging. Contracts are getting more expensive. He was able to get one of the contracts off the books. He was able to dump Whitfield back to Philadelphia for a song and a dance, a second-round pick. So, I mean, it wasn't nothing, but so that is going to help his bottom line quite a bit. Will it extend his run? I don't know. I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. I think the time in Chicago sadly is coming to a close. Still got a lot of young talent there. Don't get me wrong, a lot of sub 30 talent. Um, but I'm just not sure how much longer they'll be able to go on. Last year they were plagued by injuries, which really hurt. So if the injury bug can stay out of Chicago, I mean, they have a shot. I mean, they have a decent rotation, headlined by Falconiero, but we'll see. I fear that it's growing short there. So without some very shrewd and interesting moves, not sure how much longer they can go. But as of this year, as of right now, I still think that they are definitely in that division race. I mean, everybody would see that kind of as a three, but it's not. It's now a four division race. The only team out in that division that nobody's thinking anything about is Minnesota, who's clearly racing for the opposite way for the number one pick. Based on everything, the way all the teams look, I mean, that it seems like a slam dunk, but who knows? Mask and mass it. We'll see what happens on that. Kansas City, the most intriguing team of this offseason, went out and added everyone. They added a new first baseman. They added a new third baseman. They added a new this. They added a new left fielder just a little while ago. They added a lot. On top of that, they added an ace to the top of the rotation, Howard Marshall out of Atlanta. So you put that together, some of the moves they made last year to pick up Fletcher Ruano, to pick up Donald Cloutier. They picked up a lot of pieces last year. And they went out and traded for a bunch of pieces, signed Stoneman in free agency. They made a lot of moves to really put a push on the Central. Did they make enough moves? I think they might have. I really like that lineup. Mind you, two of them came directly from me, who I'm a big fan of, so it's a little bit different maybe. But the question was, will that rotation be deep enough? I think is going to be the big issue here. Obviously, Marshall is a supreme talent. Everett Smith, that is just an up-and-coming young player that looks really good. But after that, do they have enough? Vargas looks pretty good. Sebald, again, looks pretty good. I mean, this is kind of almost the typical build of all these high ground ball rate guys that don't look great overalls, but when you get into them, they look pretty good. Will it be enough? Do they have that defensive shortstop, that defensive second baseman that's really going to get it done? So they have the new guy, Adam Vineyard, at shortstop, a speedy guy with a lot of range. So it'll be very interesting to see this Kansas City team play. I mean, again, gun to my head, looking at this division, I'm probably giving Kansas City this slight edge right now, just because I really like a lot of the moves they made and some of the players that they got. And I fear Chicago's got the same injury plagued season again, and that's just going to really hurt them. And GB being GB, Detroit's always going to be in it. And then Cleveland, what's Cleveland going to do? I think they are the key to this division. How do they actually play this year? Is going to go a long way, since they are a cohesive team. I know some people don't probably believe in that or care about that. I always believe the team cohesion. For some reason, I always think it makes a difference in mobile. Guys that have played together for a while just seem to play better together. Too many moves, too many new guys, stuff like that could be detrimental. Again, probably bullshit. I know most people are going to think it is. That's fine. Just a feeling that I get. So we'll see. I think the Central is going to have two playoff teams probably. So it'll be interesting to see which two are the ones that rise to the top, because it really is a kind of a 4-team race there. So anybody have anything to throw in about the Central before I continue to move on? All right, moving on to the AL West. AL West is the same division it's been for the last decade plus. You've got Seattle, who's my team, that I'm just not going to talk much about because they're my team and I don't need to, or don't want to, either way. Just sitting there doing their thing. They've been doing their thing for a while now. And then you got the rest of the division. Houston is still waiting patiently to make their big hurrah. I would not be surprised to see a Kansas City type off season out of them soon. They kind of did a little bit of that this year, trading all of their picks in respect to get one young bat named Kevin Kent. So we'll see if he is more of a Clark Kent or more of a Superman moving forward. It was a lot of capital to pay for a guy that is going to be a DH. So Was it the right move? It very well might be. I mean, he does look like a phenomenal player, but we'll see how that pans out in the end. Their team is just they got some solid players. They got Corson, they got Nickel, they got Fitch, Brendan Tootin, then a couple guys at the pitching side that are starting to get there or just about ready. So I don't know. Houston's getting real close. Houston's getting real close to being that guy that comes out and I would not be surprised this year if they do poorly, get a good pick again, and then flip it next year and just start making a push for that division, and start making those moves that are going to just legitimize and cement that team into a potential playoff contender. So we'll see. Houston just is going to be them. LA's got an interesting team. They added a premier catcher this offseason, and Aaron Jordan, good defense, lefty bat, to go with a team that's got some solid guys already in it. You're looking at the Walt Vineyard, a pretty good bat out there. Ivan Figueroa, who is one of those guys that if he hit the trade market, everybody would be going just crazy for. Leo McMurtry, a guy that just didn't quite is another one of those guys, those big first baseman guys that everybody loves when they get in the draft. And then here he is, like hitting well. Don't get me wrong, hitting well, but like not nearly the level you thought he was going to be when he was drafted and as he was developing. So I think their big piece there is the Ethan Dennis, the second baseman, waiting in the wings. LA's putting along. They're not necessarily a bad team, but they're not definitely not a good team. Just a random rotation with one good guy, Tillman, at the top. So they will be okay. They're going to be one of those mid-range teams this year. And again, it's the AL West. Anything can fucking happen in this division. It is not one of the premier divisions in FCM. So just being an okay team in the AL West might get you the division title. I mean, it happens. So team grab the division, it can happen again. Oakland, dugout in Oakland does well drafting some free agent signings, and also does well just to, I hate to say it, waste good talent. He's got some very nice players out there. Pat Stone, Fred Barnes, Leah McLaren, like some good hitters out there, and just for whatever reason cannot put the finishing touches on that team to make them the contender that everybody expects them to be. I mean, he's just one of those teams that also just kind of puts around there, and you're waiting for them to just take over and shut things down, and they just haven't quite done it. Jacob Scheffler obviously is probably one of the premier pitchers. He's 26, got almost 100 wins already at 26. I mean, this dude is just a legitimate ace. Another one of those guys, if he was ever put on the market, would just take everything and then some from teams to get. But the depth's not there. There's not a lot of depth on the pitching side. There's no depth in the minors on the pitching side. Even on the offensive side of the ball, there's really only one or two big prospects in the minors. But just not a lot around them. So it's as much a depth issue as anything else in Oakland. They'll be solid, but they're probably not going to be ones that are really going to be pushing for anything major. Another team that did really well last year, and a team that I would watch carefully, is Texas. Texas got a good lineup, with that big-ass bat, Jamie Arch, right there in the middle. He's getting up there in age. He's 33. So, as long as he holds on, which doesn't show any signs of slowing down, I mean, he will continue to power that offense. And then when you have Correa at the top of that rotation, another great young arm, Texas has some good pieces. They have a solid rotation. They have a good lineup. The defense isn't bad. Texas is the other team in that division to watch out for. Made the wild card game last year. They could easily do that or better this year again. So definitely watch out for Texas. Now, again, doing what we always do. If I had to put a gun to my head and kind of pick division winners, I'm going to go New York in the East. I am going to go Kansas City in the Central and Seattle, as much as I hate to say it, in the West. I think your wild card teams this year are going to be Cleveland, and let's go with Montreal. Cleveland, Montreal for the wild card teams. I think that would be a fun one to listen to. So that is your American League. We are going to move on to the National League, and I do apologize, GD and everybody else. Yes, it is just me rambling on so far. Gilly should be coming in any minute now. He told me 10:15. which is clearly come and gone. But hopefully by the time I'm done with the NL, he is caught up, and he can carry the free agency and trade stuff, so that I can rest my voice and drink some water. But until that happens, we will continue just to plug away and move on into the National League. So the National League East, which has been kind of Atlanta's stomping ground for a good long while now. Atlanta decided to threaten to rebuild last year, didn't do it, went to the World Series instead, and this year did it. This year they sold off most of their main pieces. Now there's still some pieces left out there. Don't get me wrong. If you need an outfielder, Atlanta's a good place to go. They got some decent outfielders still available. And I believe if you're looking to add a couple things here as the season's kicking off, I believe Andy's doing the sim right now. Shop Atlanta. They still got some nice pieces out there. Definitely some good bats and some other stuff available. But please feel free to look in there. But with them trading everything off, it is Washington's division this year. For as much as that might pain people to hear, I mean, Washington was a good team last year. They really haven't done anything different. They've got a good rotation. They've got a great lineup. It's their division to lose, and I mean that in every possible way. It is their division to lose. Atlanta still has enough talent that if they don't trade, they're not going to be anywhere near a top pick, but they'll be somewhere mid-pack. Same with New York. New York traded a bunch of their big guys, even ones that were told that not going to be traded did leave. So New York will be like Atlanta, mid-pack, maybe a little bit worse. I think if I had to pick the bottom team in that division right now, it would be New York, followed by Atlanta. And then you have Philadelphia and Florida. Where are they going to go? I don't know. They've still got a solid team out there in Philadelphia. Got some good bats out there. Problem is he doesn't have a lot ready yet in the minors. Some guys that will be coming up probably in the next few years, but not yet. So it's a little ways off for relief there on the hitting side. Still got some good pitchers. Mike Walsh continues to be one of the better pitchers that not a lot of people talk about in this league. Dude is just crushing it out there in Philadelphia, pitching very, very well. Brian Rathburn has peaked out and looks to be all of what everybody would wanted him to be ever since he was drafted. Don't count on McGillicuddy, and Lack, for as horrible as that contract is just about out. Dave is almost safe from that $35 million a year hit. He'll be gone after this year and probably into retirement. Who knows? But on the pitching side, he does have some young pitchers that'll be coming up sooner rather than later. Headline probably by McMundo, and a couple of these other guys that are going to be coming up in the next, if not this year, probably next year at the very latest. So they will put together solid efforts. I don't know if they're a playoff team, but they'll do what they do. Florida's a fun one to watch. They've got some interesting hitters out there. Not quite the power hitters I would want to see in my lineup, but some darn good hitters. And their rotation is what it is. They have an aging guy out there as well, another big expensive guy, Alex Mozella, who's also off the books at the end of this year. So that almost $40 million hit will be gone, which will be not really matter for him. He has plenty of cap space. But again, a lot of young pitchers in that rotation, a lot of young pitchers down in the minors. So Florida is a team that will play pretty well this year, but they're still a year, maybe two away, I think. I think it's Washington's division to lose, and I don't foresee them doing that. So I foresee them almost Atlanta style, kind of cruising to it with a couple of the teams middling behind them. The NL Central is going to be one of my favorite ones to watch this year, just because I really like two of the teams out there. I really like St. Louis. St. Louis is just looks great. You look at St. Louis's trade block and the five guys put on the trade block. I think most teams would have liked to have had. The fact that none of them moved was a little bit surprising to me. But I really like St. Louis's lineup, and they've got a couple of great guys there in the minors. They'll be ready probably sooner rather than later. Switching catcher Tim Pennock being one of them. Aaron McBeath and just looks phenomenal already. Probably could be starting for most teams. And I like the rotation. I really like Maneri. I really like Vigiliante. I really like Chalky. I mean, these are just, and there's Jose Calderon, one of the first round picks out of last year. The guy I wanted more than anything, knowing that I wouldn't see him, and I didn't. He went to exactly where I thought he was, right there in the 4-man spot. Like, it's just a good team. They got a dominant closer and Brian Pembroke. So it is just, I really like the St. Louis team. I think, I hate to say it, I almost want to make them the favorites in the NL Central, and that's not taking much from Milwaukee. Milwaukee is the other team that I really like out there. Sorry, Gilly was messaging me. It is just I really like the Milwaukee teams too. So Milwaukee's got a rotation that I want. Let's be honest. I mean, Rocky and I tend to like similar pitchers. So you look at um, Tanaka, excuse me. Just absolutely love him. Todd is a guy that I never liked. I thought he was going to be terrible. He's turned out pretty good. I mean, he's turned out.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yep, we can hear you. So, looking at Milwaukee, I mean, you got a good rotation there, and then you got Hans. Not even going to try, but you got Hans, who I'm not out of all the guys in the rotation, probably the guy I'm least a big fan of. And then Tresca, who I'm also a big fan of. So I really like the Milwaukee rotation. I really like their bullpen. And then their hitters. I mean, they're lacking.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep. We can hear you. What they're lacking is a couple power bats. They've got a good lineup, though some of it is, again, aging a little bit. Looks like, we'll see what happens to them. I think they're lacking probably a couple power pieces, but I like Teo. I really like Cooper, Moriarty, Honeyborn. Like they've got a lot of good outfielders. Probably a bat or two off from really being dominant in that division, but I don't think it matters. I think even if they don't win the Central, they'll easily make the playoffs. As probably the top wildcard team. I think it's a two-team race out there in the Central between St. Louis and Milwaukee. Cincinnati is a wild card, I would call them. I really like some of the stuff they do on that offensive side of the ball. They've got some good players. Theo has really tried to bulk up that rotation as well. Got a couple guys out there. Alan Rose has pitched pretty well. Luke Nichols pitched solidly for them last year. Gunyong Asiano is out there pitching okay, if not good. We'll see what he does this year. Jared Gross is up there as well. Looks like a pretty good young pitcher. Solid bullpen, I'd say, not great. So it'll be interesting to see what Cincinnati does this year. I mean, I think they'll hover above 500. I think they might push for a back-end wild card spot again, and that's just not necessarily because they're a really good team. Not to take anything away from Theo. I just think that the AL East and the NL East and the NL West are just so weak by comparison that a team that might finish in the mid-80s wins out of the Central could easily get a wild card spot.
Hey, I'm back.
All right.
I can hear you.
Good. The other one in the Central is the Cubs, who are, to my knowledge, still rebuilding, but they have a good young rotation. Some of their young bats have hit pretty well, but they're missing hitters. They do not have enough hitters to really compete. They will play a pretty decent ball, but again, they're not going to be anything to write home about, and I wouldn't consider them in the playoff push. That puts us out to the NL West. NL West is San Francisco's division to lose. I mean, let's just be honest. Fred Cantrell, who most people were not fans of, looks just phenomenal. Had a great year last year. No reason why you would think that he wouldn't have another good year this year. I mean, he was the MVP last year. He was phenomenal. After winning Rookie of the Year before, he won the MVP last year, and just looks like a really, really good player. You got Tim Lynch out there as well. Some older guys, Jones, Fisher. They've got a top to bottom nice lineup with a lot of big power bats. I really dig what they're doing out there. And on the rotation side, they're not too bad. Ramon Valdor looks like he should be a solid pitcher. Vince McCarthy, they signed Brian King. Best bullpen rotation out there? No. I mean, their rotation is probably average, if not a little above average. With the lineup they have and with the divisions they play in, they'll easily cruise to the crown out there. They also have a pretty solid, if not good, bullpen as well. So, and a couple of young guys that might be ready to help them on the pitching side this year. The sad thing about them was just some of those injuries that they had last year. I know I don't even see him on the team anymore. McVeigh had a big injury and got knocked out, and that really hurt him. I wonder if he retired. Oh, that'd be so sad. Anyway, as I digress, the other teams out there are what they are. Colorado is projected to be horrible for some reason. Probably because they don't have any players. So Colorado's, no offense to Cadia, they're going to be in that Minnesota race. We all know what that means. So, and then you've got the Dodgers, who are slowly aging. They've got some good hitters that are still there, and some young guys coming up. Delaney, Moffitt look like guys that should be some much needed boost. They had their ace, Chuck Banikoff, on the block all off season. Doesn't appear that anybody's bit on him. He remains there. They've got a good young closer there in Todd McSween. So it'll be interesting to see what LA does this year. I think they'll hover in that 500-ish range. Just because I don't like the NL West. It's kind of a lot of meh. Even more meh than the AL West, and that's saying something. San Diego's got some talent. San Diego's got some nice players. Chilak still putting out good numbers. Justin French, Carlos Oxiana. They got some decent talent on the pitching side. They still got Ray Ripple, Cesar Tapas, who I'm a big fan of. I'm really curious to see what he does this year. Really like him. I think they did it a couple of years ago. I could see San Diego making a little run and making some noise out there in the West. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But really, I think it's San Francisco and everybody else just kind of pitter-pattering along with quiet feet behind them. So, again, making bold predictions in the NL. I am going Washington in the East. I am going St. Louis in the Central. I'm going San Francisco in the West with Milwaukee. And let's go with Cincinnati being your wild card teams. Milwaukee and Cincinnati is the wild card teams, and then your division winners as announced. So
you've got it. So I'm not sure where you picked up or where you're at, Mizzy, other than I think you pretty much went over the exact same predictions that I did from the NL side. I don't know if you've done the AL side yet or not.
I did. I crushed the AL side, and then I crushed the NL side, and I told them the whole time that as soon as you got here, I would stop talking for a minute, and you could go on from there. So
I wasn't sure if you had, and you were just talking a mile a minute.
I have it, and my throat is definitely telling me that I should have. So please give me your quick rundown of the AL, and then we'll move on to the section that I know you're excited about with the trades and the free agent signings.
Okay, so I'll just be really quick. So in the AL East, I have the Yankees taking the top spot. I have Baltimore in second, Montreal third, Boston, then followed by Toronto. So again, I'm going to go pretty quick here. In the Central, I have Cleveland winning that division. With the Royals, followed by Chicago, White Sox, Detroit, and then Minnesota at the bottom. AL West, Seattle, Texas, Oakland, LA, and then Houston. And with those teams, I have New York winning the division. I have Cleveland, obviously Cleveland, and then Seattle. But I also have Baltimore and Montreal with the wild card spots. I have New York over Cleveland. I have Montreal over Boston in the wild card playing game. I have Seattle over Montreal, followed by New York over Seattle. So New York's playing in the World Series. Did you already say who you felt like is going to be in the World Series or not?
No, I just picked my winners. I picked, if I'm remembering correctly, I picked New York in the East. I picked KC in the Central. I picked myself in the West. And I picked you and Cleveland as the wild card teams.
Okay, so pretty close. Anyway, New York's have them in the World Series. And then on the NL side, Washington, Florida, Philly, Mets, and Atlanta in the East. St. Louis, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Chicago, and Pitt in the Central. San Francisco, which isn't saying much. Arizona, LA, Padres, and Colorado in the West. The West is a terrible division. And so wildcard teams in the Central, Milwaukee and Cincinnati, I think is what you just said. Is pretty much word for word what you said. I have Washington over San Francisco, Milwaukee over Cincinnati in the play-in game, St. Louis over Milwaukee, Washington over St. Louis, and then Washington to the World Series. And for the World Series winner, I have New York over Washington in 6 games.
Interesting. I just realized I did not talk about the Pirates at all, and that was not a slight on Jermaine by any stretch of the imagination. And if I want him to be able to post this podcast, I probably should say something about them.
You don't have to.
I know I don't have to, but I feel like I do because I really like a couple. I do like a couple of his players. Like I really like Paul in that draft. I was dying to get, and Peter sniped him before I could get him. He's just turned out to be a very good-looking player. Like I really like the look of him. Charlie Collin is another guy out there, looks solid. And then they've James Verp there on the pitching side, who's just a phenomenal pitcher. I'm just going to call him Verp, and I'm good with it. And then again, they have a closer that I absolutely love, and Brian Mullock. I just absolutely love Brian Mullock. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. they're a couple years away. I mean, they got some talent, I think, on the pitching side coming up. They might have some talent over there on the hitting side that might eventually come up as well. They're a few years away. Pitt's such a hard team to play with. But Jermaine's doing what he needs to do out there. He could easily have traded away Verp and some of these other guys this offseason for big rewards. But he's holding pat and doing what he needs to do. So, are they going to make waves this year? No. Is it going to be next year? Probably not. But in a couple of years, I would not be surprised to see that team with some of those guys I just mentioned centering them really start pushing that central, depending on how some of those other teams play out. So I like the direction they're headed. We'll leave it with that. So
good. You gave them 30 seconds. It's good.
I gave everybody about 30 seconds, which is how I was able to talk for the last 45 minutes. So now, and again, so that is kind of our overall predictions. Now, I didn't predict who I thought was going to win each race. So if I can, again, remember who I picked, I'll quickly do that as well. But so in the AL, I had Cleveland and Montreal as the wild cards. I'm going to take Montreal winning over Cleveland. I'm going to take, and then again, they are going to be going on to face probably Kansas City, with New York and Seattle facing off in the other matchup. I will actually take Seattle over New York. I will take Kansas City over Montreal, and then Kansas City over Seattle to go to the World Series. Just because that seems logical for the way this is going to work. Then in the NL, I think I have, best team in the NL. Yikes. I'm going to go with St. Louis. I go St. Louis, the best team. So St. Louis is going to play the wild card winner, which will be Milwaukee. Milwaukee-St. Louis matchup, which will be phenomenal. Peter will play Cheeto, and then just make him look silly just because, well, maybe not. This is Peter we're talking about. No, I'm going to go Washington over San Francisco. I am going to go St. Louis over Milwaukee, then St. Louis over Washington to play Kansas City in the World Series, and I'm going to have St. Louis winning it.
Wow. So some years we're pretty close to chalk on who we think is going to be in the World Series and kind of the playoff teams. This year we're really different, which should be interesting to see how it turns out.
I prefer chalk as the same way that I lose the NCAA tournament every year. So,
okay. Well, I mean, either one of us is going to be right potentially here, and as opposed to us being exactly the same and both of us losing. So.
Which is usually what's been happening the last couple of times. We've been very similar with our projections. So it is fun to do something a little bit different this time. So now, which do you want to do first, trades or free agency? I mean, free agency seems to be kind of meh to me. I hate free agency personally. I haven't dabbled with it much in the last decade or so just because it's stupid. So let's start there. Let's start with stupid. Yeah, I hate free agency. I have nothing for you on that just because I really don't pay too much attention to it, other than I occasionally comp some guys and either they go or they come back, and that's about all I get out of it recently. So,
okay, so what I kind of looked at, I looked at every free agent signing, comp primarily. So I want to focus on comp here. There's a couple guys that I included that weren't comp, but I went through as fast as I could with this short amount of time that I had after I ate today. So I kind of did it differently this year. I looked at 4 categories. What were the great signings? What were the good signings? What were the bad signings? And then what the fuck signings at the end. And so kind of divided them into different categories that way, with the variations being on whether I felt like the team that was signed either is going to overperform or underperform, and that could be slightly overperform or slightly underperform, depending on where they're going and what team they're going to. So I kind of gauge that depending on their signing. And then in addition to that, I also looked at what the price was that they paid. This year we didn't have a hell of a lot of teams that paid a lot for their signing. Comparatively, somebody's going to correct me on that, probably Maddie. But it didn't feel like there was teams that just went crazy. And brought them over to, their team, and they would just launch them right as a pitcher. Maybe they brought a pitcher over and they actually brought a pitcher from a great hitter's park, but now they're bringing them over to a team into a pitcher's park, and it's just gonna be so much better. And nobody liked that. But we did have some teams that were better than others. So the one that I kind of wanted to start with, and I'll list the ones that are the good, what I think is a good comp signing, and I'll list these players. So Winters, Walls, Bunyan, Stoneman, and Burgess. So the reason why I felt like these guys were slight overperforms, and really every one of them was a slight overperform. Burgess wasn't a comp signing, but what I really liked about that signing, and if I go to him, I think Atlanta, I don't have it up right now, but I think Atlanta signed Burgess. And I think if I remember, he was coming from a park that was not a good hitter's park. And my notes on him, just give me a second, one I want to pull up, but my notes on him is I could see, I'm sorry, it's a relief pitcher. So he's coming from somebody, or am I thinking of a different Burgess? Hold on a second.
Yeah, from Baltimore.
Hold on a second. Because there's a Toby Burgess too, but that can't be the player, is it? No, he's still with you. Yeah, so it's Ray Burgess. So yeah, all right. So he was coming from Baltimore. So he didn't look like a lot. He's kind of one of those relief pitchers that's, just kind of a quality relief pitcher doing some yeoman's work in the short relief department, maybe as a second short relief guy. But coming over to Atlanta in the park that he's in, I need to look at the park, but I believe it's a pitcher's park, or at least more than it was for the Orioles. I gotta look. But I guess my point here on Burgess was I felt like watch Stang turn him into like a comp B player somehow. Yeah, just by coming over to Atlanta and just doing a lot better anyway. So I guess that was the notes I had in him. That's why I felt it was a good sign. It wasn't an overpay. Stoneman was a little expensive. I still feel like he's gonna perform a little bit better, slightly overperform. Bunyan is the guy I signed from Kansas City. No, LA. LA is traditionally a pitcher's park. I'm sorry, hitter's park. So you want to get the pitchers from them. So I was kind of taking him based upon kind of where he's been successful in a hitter's park, and then projecting him to be better in Montreal. So that's why I felt like he's a slight overperform with that sign. And then Winters and Walls, I feel like are also slight overperforms. Now, when we get into bad comp, and I don't know if you want to ask about those five guys, Mizzy, or do you want me just to kind of move through these guys real quick?
No, keep going.
Boring topic, huh?
No, I'll keep going. I really did not scout free agency. I really didn't care too much.
Okay.
So no, that's all.
All right. So when we go from good to bad, there's nothing in between here. So bad, I had a lot more in the bad category. So I actually had 7 signings that I felt were bad. 5 were comp, 2 were not. And these are in no particular order. Dawson, Ringelman, Vineyard, Woods, Leon, and then South and Soto were the non-comp guys. The notes I have for Leon specifically, I believe he's a pitcher and he's going to Arizona. I have a hard time seeing him do any better. If my notes here, I got to look back on where he came from. Just a second, because it was Hobby Leon, right, from Baltimore. So he's coming from Baltimore and he's going to Arizona, and I just cannot see that working out. I feel like it's going to be an awful marriage because he's coming from what, for the most part, is a middle of the road kind of park for pitchers, and he did pretty well there. He's going to go to one of the worst pitchers park. He's going to go to a hitter's park in Arizona, and I think he's going to get fucking blasted. So I felt like that's one of the reasons why I made him kind of an underperform. I think you're going to see 30 home runs off that guy potentially, whereas in the past, and I haven't even downloaded the current file yet to see what first sim was, but he's only given up like 20 some home runs at times, and 30 home runs in Baltimore. I don't know what he's going to do in Arizona, but I think he could give up 30 home runs. I don't know. It's just he could get rocked there. It's bad. It's a bad deal, I think, for Arizona. And then some of the other guys, I think Riggleman slightly underperform. It's not a terrible price, but I don't think he's going to do very well. Woods. I think Woods was a closer that Chicago picked up. I got to look him up because I don't have the teams next to the guys' names I wrote down. I'm going to have to figure that out next time.
Lowell Woods is the guy that you picked up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Woods is the guy. That's right. Woods is the guy I picked up. So I wasn't exactly sure how I kind of waffled between good and bad here. I ultimately put him in the bad category. I felt like he could underperform coming from Detroit. Not sure totally on that yet or not, but he was also slightly expensive, a 3-year contract for $17 million a year. I needed a closer, so I kind of spent a little bit more than I should have, but who knows? I felt like he could underperform. Who knows? I don't know how. I didn't have as strong a feeling on him as I did with Leon. I think Leon is one of the worst moves I could see from a team to Arizona. I just think that's a bad deal for that guy. And then Soto and South were the couple other guys, questionable, underperforming, expensive kind of guys. Now the fun signings. We entered into the fun category, and these are the what the fuck deals were these. There was 2. So one was our friend from the Angels. He bid on his own comp player, 2 years, $10 million. No bids existed. And I just kind of, I couldn't believe that he would not just at least bid 2 years, $8 million, but it was 2 years, $10 million, if I remember right. So
I tell you what, that was one signing I did see, and I'm just like, I don't get it. You could have not bid, and you would have come back at 2 years and 8, and you would have saved yourselves $2 million a year.
Yeah. So if Dan was on here, and I don't know if he's on here, but that's one of the things that I wish he was, because I'd like to ask him what were you thinking here?
Listen. Maybe nobody paid attention, and maybe he actually got a comp pick out of it. I don't know. Maybe it was brilliant. Maybe we're not giving him the brilliance that he actually deserves on this one.
Oh, I don't know. He signs a lot of comp players every year. This year, no different. And I don't know why he spent freaking $10 million.
I will stand by that plan, because that is a plan that it would be, whenever I have to go into rebuild, that is the same plan I'm going to have. Every year I'm going to sign 2 or 3 comp players and play them, and either flip them or just have them. I think that I like the idea of, I don't need the money. I'm going to sign some comp players and see what I can do with them.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think you're silently on his payroll, aren't you? You guys are working together somehow. I figured it out.
It does not look like he got a comp B for that, so that's good.
No,
or bad, because that would have been just brilliant.
So the other guy I want to talk about, and this is probably going to be more controversial just because of the teams involved and the back and forth that actually happened, but I did not like the Gentry signing by Detroit. And it surprises me because typically GB is like, he's freaking, he's unflappable. He can sign guys, and all these guys that are, washed up, supposedly, and they just play well for him. Or he has pitchers that last until they're 65 when they have health of 50. He just has the, he's got the mogul gift of the gods have blessed him, and I don't know how he does it, but I didn't like this signing. He's coming from the Dodgers, and if I were to look, I got to remember what the Dodgers are. He's coming from a hitter's park all the way into Detroit, which is a pitcher's park, and I just didn't think, if he's already playing in a hitter's park and he's producing barely 7, he used to, produce 800 OPS and things like that. Now, last year he produced 687. He's kind of on the downward trend. He's not got a great track record health-wise. I just don't, and that's one of the concerns I had, and that's why I felt like he's going to way underperform. He's got bad health, really bad contract. I mean, I just didn't like the price that he paid, so I said, it wasn't as bad as Dan bidding on his own player. But anyway, I just don't like Nate Gentry signing.
I'm going to disagree with you. I love him.
Okay, all right.
I do. I bid on him. I bid highly on him. I really liked him. I really wanted him. I thought that he was going to be a great answer for me at third base for 2 years. Unfortunately, his bidding kept going up and up and up and up and up. So I eventually decided that to err on the side of caution and just let GB have him. and instead made a trade that got blown up in my face. So it is what it is. But
I think he would have been better off at you playing for you than GB, but who knows?
it's again, I would love to have had him, but at some point you have to say no when it comes to contracts, and it got to the point that I just did not want to keep. I did not want to pay him what he was getting paid per annum for a guy that I expect to have a solid year this year, probably, and degrade personally a little bit, and then have a mediocre at best year next year. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he has a couple good years left in him, but I could not take that chance at that money based on how the rest of my cap is. So,
I mean, again, each team's effects are going to affect them differently. So, when you have a team like the Dodgers, who is arguably in one of the better hitters' parks, going to one of the better pitchers' parks, there's a big gap there. Now for you, there's less of a gap, but it could only amount to 3 to 5 home runs. Who knows? But in this case, I just didn't like the signing, and it makes for good content. So, good overall player, though. It's not that I don't like him. That's all I had for the free agent signings.
Yeah, I can't blame it. It's free agency. I never expect much out of it, and honestly, I don't give it too much thought because I just don't. It seems like a waste of time to me, but that is just a me thing. I know a lot of people build their team through free agency some years, or really supplement their team through free agency. It's just not the route that I personally go. So let's move on to trades, though. There were a lot of exciting trades this year, so really interested to see where you want to take that.
So I looked at, there's quite a few trades, and I have 9 that I researched a little bit that we can talk about.
All right.
Maybe they overlap with what you have, but do you have any that you want to start out with?
No. I was going to go off what you had. I mean, there was a lot of deals out there. I mean, there was deals out there today even. So a lot of deals happened. A lot of if anything, I can talk about the deals that didn't happen. Or that I'm surprised nothing's moved on yet.
Let's come back to that. Actually, that's a kind of a fun topic. There's a couple. It depends on how deep into the weeds we want to go to, because I've had some conversations with a few GMs that I just go, "What the hell? What you're valuing that way too high or way too low or whatever it is." But I mean, we could dig into the weeds there if we wanted to without naming names. We could just name the players.
That doesn't name the names there, Gilly, but nice try.
No, I'm just kidding. But do you want to go back? Do you want to start from the back in time, or do you want to start
start from the beginning and start from the bottom, and now we're here?
Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is actually one between you and G Money, that is the Althea trade, huh?
Yep, that was the first big one.
Yeah, so I actually think, so my perspective on this, I in the way I scored these, I scored them on points. So I went with a half scale system. So +5, plus half point, minus half point, +1. You get the idea. +2, basically half point increments. And I tried to give each team either a half a point win or a point win or whatever it could be, based upon either are they going to under or overperform, or was it bad trade value and was the cost there? So kind of on a number of factors. So I felt like Althea, and let me pull up the trade real quick, because I do not have it up in front of me right now. I felt like this was one of the more balanced trades. After reviewing the list of trades, I felt like this one was hard to give anybody a half a point, because I like the player. I really like Althea. I ultimately did give a half a point to GB or G Money on this for the deal. I felt like Althea was going to overperform in their stadium. He did well in Seattle, so it's hard because Seattle already has kind of a park for hitters, even though they're not rated as such. You tend to have pretty good offenses there. And Althea, when he gets the at bats, he does well. I mean, his OPS last year was over 900. He hit almost 29 home runs, 105 RBIs, 78 walks. Good player, and he also can play the position. And when I looked at what he gave up, I didn't really think that the guys he gave up were that special. Lee Cirillo, Adrian Cox, Ed Belgrove and Doug Pinch. So the key guy around that was Sorillo, because if I remember, Cox is the guy that doesn't have any contact. He has power but no contact. But Lee Sorillo, let me pull up here real quick. I think is he a lefty?
He is.
Imagine that. He is a lefty who he's somewhat aging, and his vitals were a little bit lower than his overall. He had good pitches, good fastball. So I didn't think he was excited. He was in the age department when you're trading a spec. He was a little bit older. So I didn't think from that perspective he got, you didn't get just a ton of, lower, younger prospects, which I like, which everybody knows. The younger the better. So you didn't get any of those guys, but for the value, I think Alfea was going to bring a ton. It's going to bring a ton to G Money's team. And I don't think he's that old. I think he's still not even 30 yet. So I like this trade. I felt like it was really hard to give half a point to G Money. I felt like this was a pretty balanced trade, but if I have to, I'll give some points to G Money on that one.
It is a trade that happened.
You don't have any expectations on it at all?
I expect so it is a trade that might confuse a lot of people. Let's start it like that. So I definitely understand why people are probably like, what the fuck is he doing? So here was the thing on my end. I love Alfie. Don't get me wrong. He is a premium player at a premium position. Here was the other thing. I did not want to pay him. I am, if anything, cap conscious, especially as we move into this new period of how money works in FCM. So I am remaining as cap conscious as possible.
You've turned over a new leaf.
It's not that I wouldn't spend money. I'll spend money if I have money to spend or I need to spend money. But I want to be. I've always been relatively cognizant of the bottom line, and even more so now. So when it comes down to it, he had
your payroll, by the way.
I don't know, like $140, something like that. But it was like $179 or $180 last year. And I do not like running. I can afford to run it that high. I don't like to. I prefer to make enough money to pay off my debts and have a little bit of money in the bank. So if you look at Alfea, and he is a phenomenal player. There's nothing against that. But you look at his year last year, as you stated, it was a career year. He clearly had a career year. And because of that, he had a career earnings bump. For me, I have a hard time believing that he will maintain that level of offensive production. I mean, his offensive production last year, I mean, you look at the stats, that they are markedly higher than any other year. I mean, his OPS was almost 100 more than the year before. Like, there's just a lot of big jumps.
It is an outlier. It definitely is an outlier.
And I'm not saying he couldn't do it again. He could clearly do that again. But 100 RBIs, 30 home runs, 40 doubles, 950 ops. Like, I don't think it's going to happen that way again. I think he will regress slightly back to what is still very good numbers: 830, 840, 850, 280 to 300, under 20 home runs, again, 30 plus doubles. Like, he's still going to have a very good year. I didn't foresee him having the same offensive year again. And again, with his contract up where it is now, chances are it's not going to shrink at all. It's going to be, at least, they're signed him long term. I'm going to have to pay him at least $18.5 million, if not more. And I don't feel like paying him that much for somebody that more than likely is not going to have that same offensive production. And a guy that's also about to turn 30.
I think he'll produce 25 home runs.
He's not going to be a bad. I'm not saying that he's going to be a bad player. He's going to die or anything like that. He had a small drop last year. He did have his first drop. I'm not one of those guys that really worries about the first one. If the second one comes next year, then I start to concern. So I mean, some of this might have been a little reactionary. I saw the drop, worried about it, figured I'd see if I can get out of him. But I really like the return that I got, and I know that most people are probably like, dude, you fucked up the return. Like that's a stupid return. I got a pitcher in Cirillo that I think could easily be a good third pitcher, if not a little bit better. I got a guy in Cox who is my heir apparent to first base for next year, because Jimenez, who we might talk about in a little bit anyway, was going to go, if not this offseason, he's going to go next offseason. So I got a guy that's going to take over first base within a year. I got a guy that's in the rotation now and could push the top end of my rotation by season's end next season. Who knows when he finally peaks out, where he peaks out at. If he peaks out high enough, he could easily be in the top end of my rotation. And then people are going to ignore Ed Belgrove, but I really like Ed Belgrove. Is he an everyday player? No, but he's the perfect platoon guy. He is going to crush lefty pitchers. He's going to play some solid defense. I'm okay with that. I will take that and have a little platoon going on in my outfield, which I do anyway. So,
are you saying platoon? Is that how you're pronouncing that?
I'm really tired. It is after 11 o'clock. I'm probably saying platoon instead of platoon. It is what it is.
I'm sorry. I just give you shit.
Bear with my exhaustion.
No, it's good. You're generous of waiting for me to get off my business meeting that I tried to get out sooner but couldn't. Again, this is a good trade for both teams. Don't get me wrong. I think hairs when I say it's a half point.
No, I think it's what it comes down to. I think that G Money got probably the better player. I think I got the potential better future end, if that makes sense. So I think it worked out great. It made him a contender now. It hopefully didn't hurt my contender status at all, and allowed me to retool in a way that's going to really benefit me. Like, again, if you look at it, if I still somehow manage to win the division this year or make the playoffs this year, after losing them, but I get these young guys that if they progress further, become cornerstones of my team moving forward, I'm ecstatic with what that deal ends up turning out to be. So,
yeah.
It's actually funny. I was talking to a pair of co-GMs on the same team about that deal. The one came out to me and just said, "Mike, I love the deal for you. It's a good deal." I'm like, I like it too. And we talked about it for a while. The other guy, his co-GM came to me, said the same thing, except for the fact that he thought I was the one that got Alfaya. When I said I wasn't, he goes, "Oh, well, you did okay," and then stopped talking to me and ran away. So,
now you know what he really thinks.
I just know across the league there was probably a lot of back and forth. I don't care. The deal could blow up in my face, but so could any trade or any free agent signing or anything that we do. But it is. So we'll see what happens.
All right, good. So we spent some time on that. It's good. So the next trade is the one that we want to talk about, and we don't have is PR on here at all, or maybe some TT. Yeah, I see both of them.
PR's here. He popped on earlier to say that he could hear me.
All right. So this is the trade that between Houston and the Mets.
Let
me pull this fancy fucking deal up real quick. All right. So this sent all picks in overall rounds 1 through 3 from Houston. That was pick 3. So not just any pick, but it's literally pick 3 in the round. So you get your top end third overall as part of this pick, and including Lloyd O'Farrell, who's a 19-year-old starting pitcher. I haven't looked at him in a while, so I'll look at him in a minute. But in return, you get Kevin Kent, so a two first name player, Kevin Kent.
Can't trust him.
No, can't trust him. 22, and he's a left fielder. I'm sure he has great defense. I'm going to pull him up here in a second.
He's a DH.
DH, okay, yeah, DH. And so, just looking at that, without even looking at the players, you got to believe Kevin Kent is the next. Name me a left fielder that just fucking rolled for 10 years.
Basil Carnes.
Basil Carnes. When I pull up Kevin Kent, he's got to look like Basil Carnes. So give me a second.
He doesn't. Basil Carnes was my first overall pick a decade and a half ago. He had a pretty solid season. Got 0% of the Hall of Fame vote this year. But he had a solid enough career to make the ballot. But he was also a left-handed hitter, so they're not really that similar. A right-handed hitter of similar ilk. Ooh, off the top of my head, nobody's popping to mind. But
so there's a couple things. So a couple things that I'm looking at. Two named guy here, Kevin Kent. A couple things pop out at me. we've already talked about DH, which it reduces the value a little bit. He could probably play first base and maybe some left field in the pinch, but it reduces a little bit. I'm not of the same mind that it just tanks people like some GMs are. I think some GMs just look at people like that and go, well, scoff, he's a DH, so therefore.
I love it when you all do that.
I don't think that way. So there are GMs that think that way. They think, oh, he's a DH, he can never play out there. And then they go on and hit fucking 40 home runs and they wonder how they won the World Series with him. But so there's a DH, so it's a slight bump down. But the things that kind of bother me about his build, and I'd have to go back and look at other builds, is he's one of those high I dudes that we just seem to not have any success with in the file at times with these guys. And I have to go back and look at the game if there's guys that, he doesn't have like 95 I, but he has 87 I, which is pretty high. He's also 22, which is fine. He's not as young as I'd wished to see it. But his contact it's not coming along versus righties. And that's the piece that would scare me. He's got hell of a lot of power. But if his if his contact versus right-handers doesn't get to 75, which it maybe will, if he doesn't get to 75, I think he's going to be hitting 230, and whatnot. I just don't think he's that good of a player.
I'm not gonna lie. Right after that trade happened, I messaged one, if not both GMs, be like, you could have offered me that on Edwards, who I see as a identical-ish player. And they told me that they were really high on Kent. And when I really looked into him, I could see why. I mean, I think I really do like the way that he looks. But they were really high on him, and apparently they had been shopping that package around the greater FCM community because they're just, I guess, not fans of the draft. And so they were really looking to just use all of that capital to get one guy they really wanted. So
I think that's the part that bothers me the most.
Kent was not their first choice. I think he was a little bit further down on their list. But I don't knock them for the move. Do I think they probably gave a lot for him? Yeah, they definitely gave a lot for him. But if he turns out the way that they think he will, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does, they'll be very happy with the return.
Yeah, I just don't. The part of it I don't like is the value on the trade. That's why I gave the Mets a +2, which is pretty strong in the point total on my scale. But I just don't. It just the 1 through 6, especially the early picks, just a tough deal to make. I just don't like it.
I think the Mets are the clear winner as we look at it now. But I think this is one of those trades that when we look back in 5 or 10 years, the scales might balance differently.
Well, we'll have to go back and look. I always say I'm going to write these things down and go back and look, and I just sometimes forget about them.
I'll chime in here if you guys let me.
Uh-oh.
It depends on what you want to say.
All right. Now, so obviously, with shopping out that draft class and stuff like that, we were looking at other deals and stuff that just kind of fell through. We weren't looking to get rid of the draft class per se. We were fine with looking at certain people to pick and stuff, but as we dug deeper into the second and the third round and the fourth round, like we just didn't like it enough to not make a deal for a guy that we really liked. And if the Kent deal was not to be made, we keep the draft class. I also really, really believed that if we had made these picks and then offered the players that we got with these picks to Decker, that Decker would have turned that deal down. I think that when you look at the draft and what comes of those picks, even at the top 3 pick, even at pick 3, there's Diller, there's Rivera, and then there's who else? And it's like we really dug deep and really tried to say, hey, like, we don't like this draft class. Even though pick 3 does have value, we don't think it's here in this draft. We think the second round is pretty great. Honestly, I think the second round is better than the first. And the third round trickles very well. But after that, picks 4, 5, we just didn't see the value. And that's not to say that there won't be great players from this draft. There will. It's to say, like, I can't find them. I can't pinpoint them. But I do know that, and in our hearts, we do believe like Kevin Kent that, versus righties on contact, he will get over 75. Like I firmly believe that.
Really?
And, yeah, I do, and I believe that. And say what you want. I personally believe that if Kent just gets to 93, 94, he's one of the best, if not the best, right-handed hitters in the file. So like, we're high on him. We felt confident in going after him in that regard, and we also thought like if there's a time to trade our draft class or to make this deal, it's right now. We have the pieces. We have certain tools. We have to make the right decisions moving forward. Like it's getting a little bit of crunch time. Obviously, we know that. But we felt really confident in getting Kent. We felt confident in kind of losing out in the second half of this draft. We were fine with that. And we were able to pay some cash to get back into the parts, which is the second round with Maddie's pick. So, looking at that, we'll see where it goes. Obviously, I think the Mets got great return. But moving forward and for the future, we just like where Kevin Kent's development was going. He only dropped 1 point his last B day, so like his development for the last year and a half has just been going well enough for us to say we'll take him. So
your logic is sound. If you don't like the draft class, then what you did there makes sense. I haven't scouted the draft class, so it's at this point, so I don't know. Maybe Mizzy, you want to chime in there, but
I have heavily scouted the draft class. I am not going to comment on the draft class.
We're not supposed to do that. That's right.
It's not like PR gave away the fucking bag. There's two obvious picks of the draft, and everybody knows them. And if you don't, then just get out of the league. But for me, there's an obvious third and fourth guy that I will not mention because you never know. They could slip to me at 13, and I would hold my breath and one of them does. So. Now, the one thing I did mark down in my blog when I was talking to both PR and TT a while back is I compared Kent to Edwards, to which they both just gave me the stink eye. So I'm going to watch Edwards and Kent as they both progress and see how similar of players they become.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Though Edwards did get a +2 in winter ball and did move an iota, so I don't know what to make of that. It just baffles my mind.
Yeah, and I didn't look at O'Farrell
Did you send Edwards to winter ball this past offseason?
Yes.
That's funny because like we had a +1 on Turris and he didn't move either, so we were kind of concerned about that. But
Andy does do things for the players. If you get a +1, if you send him the right check, he'll help you. Plus the mogul gods and whatnot. Just kidding.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm not worried about it. I'm very interested to see what it means in the long run. So, but again, I think that Houston's reasoning makes a lot of sense. I do really like Kent as a player. After they made that deal, and I looked into him some more, I definitely get why they did that. So.
Mm-hmm. Or Farrell is an interesting player too. He's I want to keep an eye on him now.
He's one of those guys that I think everybody kind of liked on draft day, and everybody since there has been kind of meh about it. So I think that he is a guy that more than likely won't be much to write home about. But who knows? I mean, it's one of those things. I've also seen guys that just look meh on a team for year after year after year, spec-wise, and then they get traded, and all of a sudden they jump or become something much better than that. So I always wonder if there's like this little thing with certain players that they need to be traded to kind of hit that next level. Like like Garrett Cole, good pitcher for the Pirates, gets traded, dominant ace all of a sudden. So it's mogul, it's a video game. I don't think there's really that minutia to it, but I'm always interested to see. So
cool. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, PR. I give you guys more shit than what I'm not serious when I give it. So you guys take it pretty well.
Absolutely, man. Love you guys too. Always a pleasure.
They do take it pretty well. I've known that for a while now.
All right. Next trade. Again, Kansas City and Atlanta. So this one had included Marshall. So I got to open this deal up. I'm going in reverse order here.
It was a bunch of picks for Marshall and maybe another player.
A player to be named later, maybe. Okay, so
those not allowed right now. So it was just Marshall for Kansas City's first, second, New York's third. Gary Solers was just a cap dump, and then outfielder Garden.
Yeah. So I actually had this one Atlanta +1 on trade value and cost. I felt like Atlanta got the better end of this one. I feel like Marshall will underperform in Kansas City. I got to look up Marshall now.
Marshall is a phenomenal pitcher. He was a guy that he was one of the many guys this offseason I even asked about. I did not like the cost. That cost wasn't unfair. Don't get me wrong. I just chose not to pay it. So I like the deal for Kansas City. I mean, it gives them their ace that they need, and by far the best pitcher in their rotation. And the cost is probably high. I mean, I think the pick was 8 overall. And the outfield specs okay, but nothing great. So like, I honestly, if anything, I'd give Montreal a +5, or Atlanta +5 based on your rating scale.
Half a point.
I think, I'd give them a half a point. I think they did well, but I mean, I think that G Money knows what he's doing and made a deal that's going to make a big difference for his team.
Yeah. And then the next one was San Francisco and Atlanta. So this one, back up here. Sorry about that. It's a Cheeto deal. Yeah. Okay. It's Brian King. It was Brian King. Atlanta sent Brian King and Paulo Venturas for picks 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Chip Foley and Baron Harris. I felt like Atlanta on this deal got the better end of it on trade value. And this is going to be a reoccurring theme. So I kind of teased this at the beginning of at least an hour or two ago. There's a team in my at least evaluation that just dominated the trades from value perspective, and it's Atlanta. I mean, this is one of the trades again. So we just talked about KC and Atlanta on the last one with Marshall. Now we're talking about one here with Brian King. Sends that guy over to San Francisco and then trade for a shit ton of picks in a spec or two. So
yeah, I definitely think Atlanta won this one. I'm not a big fan of King. I do really like Venturas, but I mean it seems like a lot to give up. And well, again, maybe not, because the second round pick's not in there for San Francisco. So when you look at it, they're really giving up a late first, and then a 3 through 6, and then 2 prospects for a pitcher that I don't like, but it's a solid pitcher, and then a reliever who I do like. So I don't know, actually. I think that if the picks had been earlier, it may be a little bit different. But I think San Francisco made out okay on this. I think Atlanta makes it better in the long run, because I don't think King is that great a pitcher. But
no, he's a lefty. What are you talking about?
I love lefties, and I don't like him. So I think that should be the bread and the pudding there, or whatever you want to call it. So I think I'd probably give your half point to Atlanta on that one. But I don't think that Cheeto's going to be hurting after that deal.
No. All right, next deal. This is actually one that I rarely include my own deals, but I figured I'd include this one. So I made a deal with the Mets for a name I can't fucking pronounce.
You're welcome.
Who is actually a former Seattle prospect, I think.
Yes, I drafted him, I think, in the second round, and then traded him for Nuttall.
Yeah. So let me pull up. I sent. Well, the Mets sent Elliot Art Exoe.
So here's what happened. I was at work, and I was in a car on my way to the hospital to pick up lunch trays. And I wasn't driving. I was a passenger because the draft was going on. And literally, he was the guy that I had on my list, and I just typed his name out into the chat, and I fat-fingered it, and that's how it came across in the chat. Everybody laughed, and Andy immediately drafted
I didn't know that.
And changed his name to the fat-fingered response, which is why his nickname is Fat Fingers.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Wow, man, I must have missed that draft or sent in a list or something, because that's freaking awesome.
Well,
I'm glad I
have missed the draft, so
I'm glad I actually have that player on my team. That makes it even better that I have a unique player like that. But I actually approached. I was looking for a player, especially a position of need, and kind of a younger player, kind of to put on my team. And so, the Mets, I was looking for somebody who was in a pitcher's park. He turned out to be this guy. I grabbed him, and I basically sent him the offer. I said, hey, I'll send you Dittmer in my first and second. which it turns out I didn't have a second, and I didn't know that when I made the deal. So that's why I was racing to get another second. And then you reminded me I had a comp, and I moved it over to Decker. So long story short, it was fixed. But I think I personally feel like I did all right on this trade. I gave myself a half point. Dittmer isn't gonna. He's expendable in my rotation. I just don't think he's gonna fit well for me, and B, especially the stadium I'm planning on building, I'm not sure he's gonna be a fit after that's done. So I felt like it was a pretty good deal to get somebody who's 23 years old playing third base, and I think he's gonna hit a shit ton in Montreal when it's all said and done.
I'd give you a full point. I mean, I don't like Dittmer at all. So when I saw that, it was funny. I had considered contacting Decker about him, about acquiring him, and that was like, maybe an hour or two before the deal actually went down. And I'm like, there's no way he's going to trade him. He's 95. He's 23. He looks amazing. Like I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to even bother Decker. With the time of day on that one, like it's just not going to happen. And then I saw the deal, and I'm just like, fuck, I should have bothered him. Like, are you kidding me? I'm like, Dittmer's not. Again, other people might really like Dittmer. I don't like Dittmer. I don't think he's much of anything. And don't get me wrong, there were nice picks that you gave him as well. But I'm just like, oh, good Christ. I'm like, I should have fucking asked that. I'm going to kick myself about that one now. So I would give you a full point on that one. And again, not that what he got back is wrong. I like the picks for him. I just don't like Dittmer. I just, for whatever reason, that type build, I feel like, at least in my park, would just be, you'd get blown up. And I'm assuming that in some other parks, it would be the same way.
Well,
so.
I mean, he didn't have the greatest of years. Plus, he was a rookie. So I don't think you're going to see another year where he gives up 45 home runs. But in a pitcher's park, I think he's going to do. He could stay under 30 home runs, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, to get to that, you'd have to send him to the pitcher's park, which would have been Florida.
Yeah.
And who knows? I mean, he's one of those guys that if Hokie actually likes, he'll go out and get. But I don't think Hokie likes him. So I mean, I think that reason enough for me right there. If you have the best pitcher's park and you don't want a guy that looks like you'd be good in a pitcher's park, yeah, I'm gonna err on the side of caution on that one myself.
Yeah, I just like getting a third base who can fucking smash. So that's what I was happy.
I think you made that very well. Not that Decker did bad on the deal. I think you made that very well.
Next deal: Chicago and Atlanta. Let's see here.
Interesting story on this one. This was almost a three-way.
What prevented the three-way? What happened?
Apparently, I'm a dick.
So it was you.
It was me. Yeah.
All right. So this was
this was the most. I feel bad for staying on this one because I definitely annoyed the shit out of him on this one because I been talking to him about somebody. Wi-Fi been talking about somebody, and he's like, "Let's just do a three-way." I'm like, "All right, let's do a three-way." And I did not like the way it was spinning out for me. So I tried to just maneuver it a little bit to get what I thought was fair on it. And apparently it was too hard for everybody to handle. So I'm just like, you know what? Fuck, I'm gonna back out. I'm like, you do your deal with him, then I'll do my deal with him, and then we'll move on. So that's what ended up happening.
You pulled out on the three-way?
I pulled out on the three. I know. I never pull out. The only thing that pulls out on my house is my couch. And yet in this deal, I pulled out. I just couldn't come to completion on it.
You just couldn't complete it. You couldn't finish.
Nope. Couldn't finish it.
All right. So Atlanta sent. Let me see. I always hate how people write this because it doesn't make any sense. So it looks like Wi-Fi guy, sent Texas's first. And I don't even know what pick that was. And Mezgar.
20.
20?
Or no, 27. It was right in front of me, I think.
Okay. Sent some inconsequential pick there for Jose Villarreal and Maldonado and a third round pick and $5 million. So I got to look these players up because I can't even.
So, Manny Mezgar was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. He went, I think, mid-first round, and he has bounced around quite a bit. A part of the reason why the three-way did not end up going through, he was a guy that I tried to have end up in my hands and not Atlanta's hands, and that did not go well. So,
So actually, this is the one deal I felt like Atlanta did not get the better end of this deal. I felt like Chicago got a hell of a good end on this one, especially for kind of the pick and the way that Jose can play. He's freaking great in the field. I gave Wi-Fi a +1 full point on this one. I felt like it was a great get. I felt like he's going to overperform in Chicago. I feel like he can be a 30 home run guy. He was relatively cheap. So I like it.
That's definitely why Chicago won up. Chicago's having all the money issues. So they get a guy on the get a cheap guy. Yeah, I mean he's a phenomenal left fielder. He's got a lot of power, decent contact, okay eye. It'll be interesting to see what he does in a full season because you can see he's only played basically half seasons the last 2 years. 2001, 82 at bats or 82 games, excuse me. 2002, 2102. 83 games. And yeah, he hit 22 home runs in those 83 games. So over a full season, yeah, 30 to 40 might be a little more projectable.
Yeah.
OPS is a little bit low for a guy hitting that much power. Does steal a couple bases. And it's maybe these are just freak injuries, but 2001 he had a 5-week injury. Last year he had a 3-month injury. For a guy with 81 health, that's a little bit abnormal. So maybe he evens it out and has a good year this year. I don't know. But yeah, I think Atlanta took a guy that they didn't need, got a first-round pick and a prospect that they really liked for him. I think that Stang will tell you it's what they want.
Yeah, I think it's a sneaky good get. I think it's going to be one of those that you look back on and go, wow, how did he get away with such a good player for a cheap price? He's kind of sneaky. Wi-Fi is he's kind of a, what's the right word I want to use when in dealing with him in trades? He very stodgy, doesn't give up a lot. I'll just say that, and I respect that. So it's no disrespect, but I don't know if we've been able to hit on a few trades in the last couple of years, but got to respect it. Got to respect someone who sticks to his guns anyway.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Don't hate the player, hate the game. All right, Cleveland and Atlanta. Let's see here. Another Atlanta trade. Gee, mini Christmas staying. All right.
John Brinson for New York.
Brinson. Yeah.
4 through 6.
Yeah, 1, 4, 5, 6. So it's New York's first, and then Cleveland's 4, 5, 5th, and 6th. So Cleveland's getting John Brinson. I gotta pull Brinson up here. If Maddie was on, he could talk about Brinson and give us all the reasons why he's the best thing since sliced bread.
I am.
All right. Hey, here we go. What do you give us your logic if you want on this trade? What were you thinking?
Well, I wanted to get a pitcher this offseason. Was in some talks with some other people, and nothing was happening. Either that or the price was just way too high and getting stupid. So I said, screw it. Let's go back to Stang because I'd already asked him on what the price were for Brinson, and the other two guys. And Brinson at that point was the last guy left. So yeah, I still like him. Let's go for it and see. His price was a first and third. I didn't have a third, so it's going to be one of those. Here you go. Here's the rest of what I got. What I'll throw out there.
Kitchen sink. Yeah, I like it.
I don't know if it's a kitchen sink offer. I mean, it's a 4th, 5th, and 6th. Not like there's anything great, but if you're gonna say 4th, 5th, and 6th or 3rd round pick, yeah, it's probably about the same. At least you get 3 bullets to fire and see something out of it.
I mean, if you're Peter, you gotta like those picks.
Oh yeah, because you'll turn those into 1st-round picks in 4 years.
No, I like the deal. I felt like it was a good deal. I felt like the price was good for you. I gave you half a point in this deal. It's another reason why I feel like you're going to win that division. Sorry for picking you and spiking the ball, but
thanks. But I think the one thing that is a concern is that Brinson's making $18 million, and with how the demand and all that stuff works, he's a stupid amount of money. I mean, I might just be spinning him back in the free agency. I'll take my Type A pick and just know that I spent basically a few slots from 22 to whatever pick is that I get for him for a season, and be fine with it. But we'll see where I can get his demands too, if I lock him down for a few more years. But yeah, I think Stang gets his first round pick for him, it's not a bad
Yeah.
a couple of other picks to see what can happen with him. And the fact
Yeah.
that there's only 10 comp picks this year, so that means that the fourth is still gonna stay pretty solid, as well as the other pick not gonna move back very far either.
Mm-hmm. No, I like him. I like him. I think even if you'd given another pick like a third, it still would have been a good pick or a good trade for you. I feel like you got some value on it. So yeah, I like him. I think he's going to play well. I think he's going to do well in your park too. Next guy or next trade. Well, Mizzy, what'd you think of that deal? Sorry.
I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I think that he paid about what you would expect someone to pay for Brinson. Again, he was a pitcher that I looked at because I scouted most pitchers in the free agent market, trade market, think about picking up one. Wasn't a huge fan of, but I was offered Brinson. I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but I thought the offer was way too much, so I decided against him. But I just didn't. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think part of it is what Matty said. The $18.5 million just seemed a little bit much for him, for what I would want to pay for that type of pitcher. Not that he's a bad pitcher, but just for that type of pitcher, it seemed more than I wanted to pay, both salary wise and then acquisition cost wise. So I'm trying to go back to see what he wanted for. And again, this was just, he said, "Hey, give me this for Brinson." I said, no. So, but you go on. I'm not going to tell you what he wanted anyway. So,
all right.
I'm just curious.
Atlanta and Chicago. Real quick, can you talk a little bit about this trade? I gotta do something real quick. I gotta step away for 1 second.
Atlanta and Chicago, you said.
It's a recent one, yeah. It was
The Cubs.
Joseph Canton. Yeah, just 1 minute.
So Cubs get Canton. So basically, Cubs were trying to get the free agent reliever that Gilly got, but unfortunately, Jason was not able to get on often enough to keep the bidding going. Probably better on that half. So he went and spent his second, fourth, and a Hugh Nelson for Canton. Canton's a very good relief pitcher. Again, makes the Cubs look more like somebody that might be going for it sooner rather than later. I don't know. When you want to grade out the trade and look at it, a.k.a. Gilly style, I mean, Canton's been a guy that's pitched phenomenally, especially the last just forever. I mean, he's a guy that hasn't really been. He's the guy that was shoved into the reliever role, but still has that 71 in turns. So he was a starter, turned reliever. I think the problem with this deal is he needs to make it $20 million. Probably why he went for what he went for, not for what he could have gone for. But $20 million is a lot to pay for a guy that is a reliever, at least in my mind. So the fact that he didn't give up a ton for this player is probably okay. I'm not too sure about Hugh here. I'm gonna have to go look at him. Hugh Nelson is he's a defense first, 22-year-old left fielder. So I don't think he's much to home right, but you're hoping for a big jump out of him. Not a lot to write home about. The real question comes to where those picks end up. I can't remember how high the Cubs are picking this year. Picking 10th overall, so you're getting a pick in the mid-second round, as well as probably the late third round or late fourth round, I believe. Let me double check here. Fourth round. So yeah, I mean, I think Atlanta probably made up pretty well on that deal. They get a bunch of money off their books, get a couple of solid picks, and then for the Cubs, you get a player that might be a pretty darn good closer for you. So even up. I'll call it even up. Gilly doesn't like the even up trades, but that's how I'm going to call it. So
yeah, I gave Atlanta half a point. I felt like Canton's probably going to underperform in Chicago, just based upon kind of where I'm seeing that fit. I just don't feel like it's a good fit, and the value maybe wasn't necessarily there. Mostly because I didn't feel like it was going to be a good fit in Chicago. So half a point to Atlanta.
Yep, I was right. I hated the Brinson ask. All right, so.
And then the last one is the most recent one between you and Stang. Imagine that almost, well, let me count. Out of the conversations, 60, almost over half the trades, well over half the trades have been involving Atlanta. So again, I think
Atlanta had a World Series run there. And had a lot of great pieces, so they did quite well.
They did quite well, and plus Sting's going into his strategy, which is slash and burn. You know, he wins the World Series, and then he burns it down, and then in 4 or 5 years he's back to World Series again. So, this one is Kruger. It involves Kruger here. So you got the left fielder Kruger, and Atlanta got, in this case, a bunch of specs. You didn't want to give any picks then, or did you have any more picks left to give?
I have a ton of picks to give, and I have offered those ton of picks on a ton of different players. None of those deals have worked out yet.
Why is that?
The one didn't work out because the individual decided the caliber of player they were trading is not worth the picks they were getting in this particular draft class. One didn't work out because the ask kept getting higher and higher and higher for a player that's good, but I don't think is as good as the ask was getting. And that's it for picks. Then the other one was not a picks-based deal, so.
Okay.
I've had a lot of near misses this offseason, and it has frustrated me quite a bit.
So I gave you a half a point in this deal. Again, even though I felt like Stang crushed this trade, I felt like Kruger, the value that Kruger brings, he is going to crush the ball in your park. I mean, he's just.
Hope so.
He's young. He's 27, relatively young. So you're gonna, and he's still in arbitration. So you got a little bit of control there. I think he's going to be, I don't know how many years he's been in ARB, but at least a couple, maybe one. I have to look. He's got great eye, which I know you like. You like the high eye guys, power and contact. He is, quote unquote, some would call it DH. And some GMs would. He could play in the outfield. Not great, but at least decent. But he's going to give you that power that you need. I got to look at his, hits righties, hits lefties. No, now a little bit of concern with his powers against righties, though. Do you have any concerns with it being that low compared to against lefties?
It's not ideal. To be honest, I was looking for a left-handed outfielder to pair with my Belgrove. And
I might have a guy for you for that, maybe, if you want.
I did not find that left-handed outfielder that I was looking for. So, couple that I asked about weren't for sale. Some remained that way, and some did not. Then some just didn't work out, or I didn't find the one that I was really looking for. I was looking for something quite particular, and it just didn't quite work out. So I ended up finding a guy that I thought might not be the best power guy in Kruger, but pretty solid. I mean, before I made the Kruger deal, I made a cash deal with San Francisco to pick up Escaflowne or something like that. And I really liked his power. And he was lefty bat, and I really liked him. But then the Kruger deal kind of fell into my lap. And I didn't think I gave up too much to get Kruger. I thought it was and the last part of that deal, I basically gave him Kronk to get Pinch off my hands. Because Pinch got dumped on me as a salary dump in an earlier deal. So I dumped him to Atlanta in this deal just to get a little more salary off the books. I really like Dixon. Younger, honestly, when I traded for him, my whole game was to flip him for something else that I needed. That was my goal with Younger from the get-go. So flipping him for Kruger was fine by me.
Mm-hmm. Now, so I felt like he was going to overperform for you. But I looking at it a little bit closer, his vitals kind of against righties. I'm that may have to see how that works out. I don't know if he's going to hit for power like we thought. So we'll see.
No, he's not going to be some big power bat. I'm not going to get some 30, 40 home runs out of him. I'll probably
put him at left, seventh.
I'll put him in left field, and then against righties, and then right field against lefties. I'll probably get 15 to 20 home runs out of him if I'm lucky. And is it ideal? No. If I can get a bigger power bat on the market, will I do it? Yes, I will go out and get a bigger power bat and send Kruger to a platoon, or just straight off the bench. I don't care. But so far, that other bat has not happened.
So what you're saying is we're going to see him in the trade block, DH available, is what you're saying?
No. He's not making that much money. I like him well enough. I will if I end up putting him to the bench, I'll probably just keep him.
So he's probably going to get hurt, and he's going to be out a couple months. Is probably what's really going to happen. You're going to be crying.
In which case, I call up the guy that I bought from San Francisco and hope that that's enough to make the playoffs.
Cool. All right. So that covers the 9 deals that at least I had sitting here. Where do you want to go from here? I think coming out of this, maybe it's worth a conversation. I know it's been posted, and I know the the price of players is going to go up. Maybe it's worth a conversation at some point for Andy to kind of go over those in more detail at some point, just conceptually. Maybe that's another podcast for another day. Kind of just cover that again. So
that'd be another podcast for another day. I think the one thing that you need to take into consideration too, as we sit here now, there are still a lot of good players out there on the trade block. So I mean, you look at Toronto. Toronto's not made a single deal yet, and they've got 3 huge pitchers sitting there on the trade block. The fact that none of them have moved, but all of Atlanta's have moved, a lot of other pitchers have moved, it is a surprise to me to some extent. That some, if not all of those guys did not move this offseason. I really thought
didn't Toronto get a new GM?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So and part of this, so yeah, they got Breeze, who's been around a couple. I've played with him in a couple leagues. And part of the reason might be just, he's a new GM to this league. I'm trying to kind of suss out what it is. I don't know how many people have been offering him friendly advice. I would assume a number of people trying to help him out, which makes sense. You hate seeing new guys come to the league and Jacob it, and he's not going to do that. He's a good GM. So, so I think there's just a little bit of caution on his part. Another part, he was out hunting all weekend when everybody was making trades. So I think that some of the market passed him by while he was out there shooting for those deer. So I think a lot of different things go into that, but I mean, they have 3 big pitchers out there. They have Patrick Jr., they have Omichi, and the right-handers whose name is dodging me at the moment. Excuse me, I believe Menard. So I mean, they have 3 big pitchers out there that should command decent deals. I think part of the problem is that. Obviously Menard and Omichi probably would not command the deals that Junior would command. But, is the new GM going to be willing to pull a deal like what Atlanta got for Brinson or what Atlanta got for King or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll be able to take a deal that might not look the prettiest to them, but is a fair market deal. And then Junior, I'm surprised that Junior hasn't gone. Honestly,
Wow.
He's a guy that everybody's wanted forever. And the fact that he is still there is a bit of a surprise.
Well, I think you already said it. He's a new GM, and coming into the league, he's got to feel it out. He's still trying to get his feet underneath him. And with the rest of the Sharks waiting with bated breath to take, to offer him some friendly advice on these players, So I'd probably be doing the same thing, at least hesitant on what he wants to do with those players, kind of planning, seeing what the market looks like,
As Poldy points out, though, I mean, those guys are aging. And if he doesn't trade them soon, and I hate to be that harbor, I mean, they could start to drop. I'm not saying that they will. I don't think that they're necessarily prime for it either, but they could start to drop. And if they start to drop before he's able to trade some of them or all of them, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, could be. I mean, he'll set back his rebuild another. He's got to use the pieces he's got now.
And he does, and that's the thing. Outside of those 3 big pieces, and maybe that young bat Donnie Button, who looks like just had a drop in spring training or something, because I'm pretty sure he was higher rated than he is now. I mean, there's not much there. Toronto was kind of threadbare to begin with, so he needs to strike while the iron's hot. But I don't know who out there is still looking for pitching, and I think that's going to be part of the problem that he runs into. I don't know outside of, I mean, you and I talked about this earlier. You could use a pitcher, but don't have the pieces to acquire probably one of those caliber level pieces. Outside of that, there's not a lot of teams that still need one. And the ones that could use one might have already gotten one and don't have the pieces to acquire some of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think that's going to be a really big thing. Is pretty much most of the picks are owned by Atlanta, and they're not going to be looking for one of those pitchers. I think that's a problem that he could that he could find. I know that, because I was talking to him about one of those pitchers, and it just kind of seemed to go on and on and on to the point of, okay, I don't think it's happening, so I'll go somewhere else, and that's Brinson. But I think, it seemed to me from talks that we had, he had enough of offers to figure out if he was getting a good deal or not, and probably should have pulled the trigger on at least one of those, because there's probably someone else there who already got their pitcher or went ahead and picked up something else, and now they don't have that for picks. So
Yeah.
if I had to guess, probably really won't be making those big moves until after the next year's draft picks are available to be
I
traded.
mean, out of the guys, Patrick's probably the one that he's got a good contract. He's only being paid $13 million until 2017, and he's ace material. So he should.
Not
You're right,
material.
Manny.
He is an ace. So
Yeah, I mean, I think Maddie's right. I think he may have missed the boat on some of the premium picks.
I know one team that had Patrick talks didn't deal for a pitcher and probably still could. So I mean, there's always hope out there. It's just a matter of will the prices be met. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you should help him on just understanding the value of picks and offer your friendly advice. See what you can do.
To be fair, I did offer him advice when he came into the league that any questions he had or any help that he would need, that I would gladly be of assistance. And then I told him that I would not ask about any of his players. So, and I've only broken one of those deals. So it's not a big deal.
Could he be a little leery of your advice? I don't know. I don't know if there's.
Sure, he shouldn't be. Honestly, I offered it just freely, and there was no subtle anything. I wasn't trying to get into his good graces that then try to bend him over on a deal. That was not my intent.
No. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just.
Yeah, but you should be, and everybody's probably thinking it. So I'm just telling you what it is. But whatever.
There's another pitcher out there. I think that you mentioned Banikoff earlier.
Yes, I also called him an ace, but I didn't mean it.
I don't think he's an ace, but some GM who
he's not a bad pitcher. I would anytime a GM puts a pitcher out there on the market and labels them an ace or labels them the superstar or something like that, I'm just like, well, that's yes, those are your worst, Matty, and I completely agreed with you. It turns me a little bit off. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they are an ace, sometimes they might be a superstar. But good God, when you have to feed me that much before I even know what the player is, I get a little worried.
Yeah, he's probably worth what, a 1 through 3 typical trade offer, maybe.
I think that most people would peg him as that, but he is in steady decline. So personally, I might offer him a late first on him and just hope to get a year or two out of him and then maybe comp him. But he's in steady decline. I don't think I'd pay a lot for him.
No, I know. I don't call him an ace, and I kind of for the same reasons you kind of hinted at. He's had some good numbers, but a lot of GMs are looking at him and thinking what he'll be in the next 3 to 4 years, and they see the drop, they see the start to decline. He's got good production, but will it continue? I think that's the question, and I think that's preventing some offers that Poldy would probably, or Percy would probably, no, not Percy, Poldy, no, LA, no, it's SSR, probably preventing from pulling the trigger. Might not be where he wants them.
I doubt that he got many offers, and I doubt any of the offers he got were what he was looking for based on the way that he called him an ace. So
yeah,
it's just one of those things. This year, the market was flush with starting pitchers. I think that's part of what hurt Breeze's ability to move some of those guys in Toronto. Like, you're new to the league, you're told to sell your guys high, as he should, and then everybody else is just like, and they go out and they get a Brinson, and they go out and they get a Canton, and a Marshall, and a this, and a that, and what you need to do then at that point is look at those deals and go, this seems to be a similarly rated player. What is he going for? When you ask double that, you're not going to make a deal. It's just not going to happen. You need to, read the room, read the trades, understand what's going on. Again, Marshall went for a 1 through 3 and a solid outfield prospect. Marshall's a darn good pitcher, maybe a couple years older than Junior, for example, but to expect much more than that out of your guys when those are what the other pitchers are going for, probably not realistic.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we went for 90 minutes. What else did we want to cover? Anybody from the podcast section here that hasn't spoken want to jump in here and offer their own advice or clarity or talk about deals that have or haven't been made? Open up the floor anyway.
Yes, let's open up the floor. Gabriel's talking, so that my wife ends up being right, and I end up going to bed way late. She's like, "You're gonna roll into bed at 1:30 and wake me up again, and then I won't go back to sleep." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be on for an hour." She's like, "You always say that, and you never are." Here we are, almost 2 hours later. She ain't wrong.
I guess I'll just say that I thought it was interesting that I kind of opened it up to, pretty much any player on my roster could be had, and I really didn't get much talk. Some of that might be just where things didn't line up. It seemed like there was a lot of outfielders that were available, and there wasn't a lot of movement there unless you had a guy that was really, really young, really, really cheap. Anyone that made any sort of money didn't really get traded. It was all about pitching, and sort of for the sellers, it was make your move before the buyers buy up what they want, and then they don't need it anymore.
Yep.
It was definitely. I want to say it was a buyer's market this year, to be honest. I mean, I could see it being called either one, but I mean, there was a lot of stuff out there for buyers to pick from. And some of us are still sitting here with picks and specs and wanting to buy things, but nothing's out there to buy. So it is what it is. The season has officially started. Sim 1 is in the books. As Percy well knows, he's the best team in baseball as we sit here right now. So it's early. We'll see how things progress, but congratulations to Percy on a good Sim 1.
Yeah. Well, I should probably look that up here.
You don't have to.
All right. Well, anything else?
I have nothing else for the good of the order. That being said, I do need to try to remember how to actually close this out so that it saves. So I'm going to continue to talk and pretend that I am not scrolling up to look for this thing. So, I'm going to try this. All right. So, good night and good luck, everybody, on the brand new season.